The neon lights of Station Meridian cast kaleidoscopic shadows across Kai's face as he pushed through the crowded spaceport bar. 3 weeks hauling cargo through the outer rim had left him exhausted, his muscles aching from constant zero-G adjustments. All he wanted was one good drink and maybe 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The bar, the Crimson Nebula, was packed with the usual crowd, smugglers nursing whiskey, off-duty miners spending their wages, a group of Centauri traders arguing loudly in their clicking language. Kai squeezed between bodies, finally finding a spot near the panoramic window overlooking the docking bays. That's when he saw her. She stood alone, impossibly still amid the chaos. Pale skin that seemed to glow against the darkness of space beyond the window. Hair black as the void itself, falling in perfect waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped in cold, silver, like molten starlight, reflecting the distant galaxies with an intensity that made his breath catch. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves, elegant and out of place among the worn flight suits and cargo pants. Everything about her screamed danger, yet Kai found himself drawn forward like a ship caught in a gravity well. "You're staring," she said without looking at him, her voice smooth as silk and cold as deep space. Kai's cheeks flushed. "Sorry. You don't look like you belong here." Now she turned, those silver eyes fixing on him with an intensity that made his heart race. A slow smile curved her red lips. "And where do I belong? Somewhere expensive. Elegant. Not a dive bar on a shipping station." He gestured to the bartender. "Can I buy you a drink?" "I don't drink." The way she said it carried layers of meaning he couldn't quite grasp. "But I'll keep you company." Her name, she told him, was Celine. She asked about his work, listened with genuine interest as he described the loneliness of long-haul cargo runs, the beauty of nebulae seen up close, the strange satisfaction of navigating through asteroid fields. She laughed at his jokes, a sound like distant chimes that made something in his chest tighten. "What about you?" Kai asked, emboldened by her attention. "What brings you to this corner of nowhere?" Celine's smile turned mysterious. "I'm between engagements. Sometimes I like to watch people. See how they live their small, bright lives." She leaned closer, and he caught her scent, something ancient and intoxicating, like old roses in starlight. "Most are so afraid of death they forget to truly live. And you're not afraid." "Death." Her silver eyes gleamed. "Death and I are intimately acquainted." Hours slipped by like minutes. The bar gradually emptied as ships departed and new arrivals replaced old faces, but Kai barely noticed. Celine was fascinating, intelligent, witty, with a darkness lurking beneath her elegant surface that both frightened and attracted him. She spoke about distant worlds he'd never heard of, described civilizations that had risen and fallen, talked about time as though she'd lived through centuries instead of years. Kai assumed she was well-traveled, educated, perhaps from one of the core worlds where people had the luxury of history and culture. "You're quite fearless, aren't you?" Celine observed, studying him with those unsettling silver eyes. "Most people sense something wrong about me. They keep their distance. I don't feel anything wrong." Kai's words came out softer than intended. "I feel pulled. Like your gravity, and I'm caught in your orbit." Her expression shifted, surprise flickering across her perfect features. For just a moment, the cool mask slipped, and he saw something vulnerable beneath. Something ancient and lonely. "You have no idea what you're saying," she whispered. "Then tell me." Celine stood abruptly, moving to the window. The stars painted her profile in silver light, making her look ethereal, otherworldly. Kai followed, standing close enough to feel the strange coldness radiating from her body. "What if I told you," she said slowly, "that I was dangerous? That people who get close to me tend to disappear?" I'd say that sounds like a pickup line from a bad thriller vid. Kai grinned, trying to lighten the sudden tension. "Come on. You're mysterious, sure. But dangerous. You look like you couldn't hurt a fly." Celine turned to face him, and for a heartbeat, her eyes flashed crimson, deep red like fresh blood. Looks can be deceiving. Maybe it was the drinks. Maybe it was 3 weeks of isolation making him reckless. Maybe it was simply that Celine was the most captivating woman he'd ever met. Whatever the reason, Kai leaned in and kissed her. Her lips were cold against his, soft and unmoving. For a split second, everything stopped. The background noise of the bar, the music, the conversations, the clink of glasses, fell silent. The temperature dropped so suddenly Kai could see his breath misting in the air. Celine's body went rigid, her hands frozen at her sides. Then the world came crashing back. The music resumed. Warmth flooded the space. But Celine's eyes were no longer silver. They blazed crimson, pupils contracting to vertical slits. Her lips parted, revealing fangs that definitely weren't human. Around them, every person in the bar had stopped moving. They stood or sat like statues, frozen mid-gesture, mid-word, caught in some inexplicable stasis. What? Kai stumbled backward, heart hammering. What are you? Celine's hand shot out, impossibly fast, gripping his wrist. Her touch was ice cold. Do you have any idea, she whispered, voice carrying harmonics that resonated in his bones, how many people have tried to kill me? Kai's mind raced, trying to process the impossible scene around him. 30 people frozen like mannequins. A woman, no, not a woman, with crimson eyes and fangs holding his wrist in a grip that could probably crush steel. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but her words echoed in his head. How many people have tried to kill me? I'm not trying to kill you, he managed, voice shaking. I kissed you. Celine's expression was unreadable, those red eyes searching his face. Slowly, deliberately, she released his wrist. The frozen people around them began to move again, conversations resuming as though nothing had happened. The temperature normalized. Her eyes faded back to silver. Come with me, she commanded, turning toward the exit. Now, Kai should have run in the opposite direction. Instead, he followed her through the station's corridors, away from the populated areas, deep into the maintenance sections where the lighting was dim and the hum of life support systems echoed off metal walls. Finally, she stopped in an empty observation deck. Through the massive viewport, a ringed planet hung in space, bathed in the glow of its distant sun. My name, Celine began, her back to him. Is Celine Vex? Does that mean anything to you? Kai's blood ran cold. Even he, who spent most of his time in deep space away from news feeds, had heard whispers. Stories told in hushed voices in bars like the one they just left. Tales of a vampire queen who drained entire fleets, who could move through shadows, who had lived for over 1,000 years. The scourge of the outer systems. The Crimson Death. But that's just a legend. Propaganda from the war. Is it? Celine turned, and in the dim light, she looked less human. More predator. 300 years ago, I led my people against the Federation. We lost. My kind were hunted to near extinction. Now I'm the last of the true bloodline. She moved closer, each step deliberate. I've spent centuries hiding, feeding when necessary, avoiding attention. I've had emperors beg for mercy, warriors try to stake me, scientists attempt to capture me. I've been feared, hated, hunted. Celine stopped inches away, looking up at him with those ancient silver eyes. But you saw me in a bar and thought I was beautiful. You bought me a drink I couldn't accept. You made me laugh. And then you kissed me. Her hand came up to touch his face, fingers ice cold against his skin. You were the first person in centuries to look at me, not as a monster, not as a legend, not as a weapon or a threat, but as a woman. Kai's heart pounded so hard he was sure she could hear it. What are you going to do to me? A slow smile curved her lips, fangs just visible. I haven't decided yet. The tension between them was electric, dangerous. Kai knew he should be terrified. This woman could kill him with a thought, had probably killed thousands. But standing this close, seeing the loneliness in those ancient eyes, he felt something else entirely. You could run, Celine murmured, her cold fingers still tracing the line of his jaw. I'd let you. Wipe your memory of this night and send you back to your small, bright life. But, Kai whispered, but I find myself curious. Her other hand came up to rest against his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. Your fear is honest. Natural. Yet you haven't fled. Why? I don't know, Kai admitted. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe 3 weeks alone in space broke something in my brain. Or maybe, he covered her hand with his own, feeling the unnatural coldness of her skin. Maybe I see someone who's been alone for far too long. Something shifted in Celine's expression, a crack in her ancient armor. You think you understand loneliness? You're 30 years old at most. A mayfly's lifespan compared to mine. Then show me. Kai's voice grew steadier. Show me what it's like to live that long. To carry that weight, Celine's eyes flashed crimson again, but this time it felt less like danger and more like desire. You're asking for something you don't understand. My bite doesn't just take blood. It shares memory, emotion, experience. It's intimate in ways your species can't comprehend. So show me. She laughed, a sound both beautiful and terrible. You really are fearless. Or foolish. Perhaps both. Her hand slid up to cup the back of his neck, pulling him closer. Once I do this, you'll be changed. Connected to me. Are you certain? Kai's answer was to kiss her again. This time, she responded. Her lips were cold but hungry, centuries of loneliness pouring into that kiss. Her body pressed against his, and despite the ice of her touch, heat flooded through him. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, feeling the inhuman strength coil beneath that perfect skin. Celine broke the kiss, breathing hard despite not needing air. Her eyes blazed crimson. Last chance to run, cargo hauler. I'm done running from what I want. She smiled, fangs gleaming. Then hold still. Her lips found his neck, kissing softly at first, then harder. Her fangs scraped against his skin, not breaking it yet. Teasing, testing. Kai's hands tightened on her waist, his heart racing with fear and anticipation and something darker he didn't want to name. When her fangs finally pierced his skin, the pain was sharp and brief. Then came the flood. Memories poured into him, not his own but hers. Centuries of existence compressed into heartbeats. Kai gasped as Celine's memories crashed through his mind like a tidal wave. He saw her as she was 1,000 years ago, a young vampire princess on a world that no longer existed, watching her father's empire span star systems. He felt her joy at discovering her powers, the intoxication of immortality, the glory of conquest. Then came the darkness, the Federation's invasion. Watching her people hunted, enslaved, exterminated. The weight of being the sole survivor, carrying the legacy of an entire civilization on her shoulders. Centuries of hiding, of feeding on those who wouldn't be missed, of watching mortal lives flicker past like candle flames while she endured, unchanging, alone. The loneliness was crushing, a void that threatened to swallow him whole. But through it all, he felt her strength, her refusal to simply give up and face the sun. Her determination to survive, even when survival had lost all meaning. When Celine finally pulled away, Kai collapsed against the viewport, gasping. Blood trickled down his neck, but the wounds were already closing. Her saliva carried healing properties. His head spun with the weight of 1,000 years compressed into moments. Now you understand, Celine whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She licked his blood from her lips, eyes still crimson. This is what I am. This is the burden I carry. Kai looked at her, really looked. She no longer seemed like a predator or a legend. She was simply a woman who had survived too long, loved too many who turned to dust, carried too much history alone. Come with me, he said suddenly. Celine blinked, surprise crossing her face. What? On my ship? Come with me. Kai straightened, his mind clearing. The connection between them thrummed like a live wire. He could feel her presence in his head, her emotions bleeding into his own. You said you're between engagements. You spend your time watching people live their small, bright lives. So live one. Just for a while. You can't be serious. But her voice held hope, dangerous and fragile. I have a run to the Helix cluster. 6 weeks through uncharted space. No stations, no people, just stars and silence. He stepped closer, taking her cold hands in his. You gave me your memories. Your loneliness. Let me show you what it's like to not be alone. Even if just for a little while. Celine stared at him, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked uncertain. Vulnerable. I could kill you. Drain you completely in your sleep. I'm dangerous, Kai. A monster. Yeah. He smiled. But you're my monster now. And I'm apparently your foolish mortal who's stupid enough to kiss a vampire queen. She laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and delight. The crimson faded from her eyes, returning to that liquid silver. You really are insane. Probably. So is that a yes? Celine considered for a long moment, searching his face. Then slowly she smiled, a real smile, not the careful mask she wore. 6 weeks. Then I leave. 6 weeks, Kai agreed, knowing he was lying. knowing she knew he was lying, knowing neither of them wanted this to end after 6 weeks. They left the station together as the rings of the planet below began to catch the light of dawn. Kai's small cargo ship wasn't much, a cramped cockpit, a tiny living space, engines that rattled more than they should. But as they lifted off into the black, with Celine seated beside him watching the stars with wonder she hadn't allowed herself in centuries, it felt like the beginning of something impossible. Maybe she was the galaxy's deadliest vampire. Maybe he was just a cargo hauler with terrible survival instincts. But for that moment, hurtling through the cosmos together, they were simply two people who'd found each other in the vast loneliness of space. And that single kiss, that one moment of fearless connection, had changed the fate of the galaxy. Because for the first time in 1,000 years, Celine Vex remembered what it felt like to hope. Then,